the academic side of things. Graduated in '99 from the University of Illinois College of Law. From there, went to go work at about a 60 attorney law firm, which was doing insurance defense work. And then after that was recruited by a plaintiff's firm to do personal injury and workers' comp. Did that for about 5 years out in Oak Brook. And then after that, I've been either partnered or on my own in one degree or another. And this year marked 21 years of practice.
Wow, man. Can you believe it's flown by that quick, huh?
The gray hair on my beard shows it. But yeah, it's gone very quickly. I
shave mine nowadays, right? But I don't get that manly beard like you do, so...
neck beard.
Well, hey, and actually that's when I met you. Can you give us a little bit of background on the partnership side? I believe we met at a networking group a long time ago, kind of a close-knit type of people, and we created a relationship. But I remember you were with a gentleman that you were partners with. Tell us how that actually started, the beginning of you going out on your own, and especially the partnership side, which was the first firm, I believe, that you started, correct?
Right. So I was working at a larger firm, and, one of the big important things that a person has to decide for themselves is, as you're out there and you're trying to hone your craft, as you're trying to improve yourself as a professional in whatever line of work you do, you got to make sure that whatever office that you're in is it meets your culture. What are you looking for from the job? Pulling a paycheck is important, but also pulling information and knowledge, and actually just being comfortable, being excited to go to work every day is also an important component. In this particular firm that I was at, right there downtown, right across from City Hall, tall building, view of the lake, all of that kind of stuff. I had everything I thought I wanted, but there were some things about the firm culture that, I really wished had been different. Like we had mandatory Saturdays. So no matter how much work you'd gotten done during the week, you had to be in there on Saturdays. And so as a young lawyer coming out, maybe being a little bit headstrong, I was one of the top billing associates at that point in time, but just made a decision that working every Saturday wasn't in my interest level. So I had a couple of conversations with one of the main partners of the firm about that. And after about a year of practicing, I had another opportunity that comes along. Like they say, if one door closes, another one opens. Mm-hmm. And then after that, I went to go work with another established attorney out in Oak Brook. And I did that for 5 years. And, just like any other business, markets change, moods change, folks change. And although it was a great experience and I learned a lot and I had a lot of opportunity there, I felt that another opportunity had come along with a colleague who was more in line with my age and goals. And so we came back downtown, did a firm for about 3 or 4 years. And then, of course, the markets changed. Things changed after that as well. And since then, I've been on the southwest side of Chicago on Archer Avenue. And I founded the Archer Law Group. And our practice areas include mostly representation of real estate investors, and pretty much anything having to do with land and land ownership.
So go a little bit deeper. I'm going to make you backtrack a little bit just for the fairness of our viewers.
Sure.
What was that transition like? What were some meetings about? How did you start to articulate the next move, especially in a partnership scenario? We've had a lot of guests that have had some ugly scenarios in partnerships and some great ones. So walk us a little bit through that before we get to the Archer Law, then going deeper on that.
Well, it was an interesting time in those days, but essentially one of the most important things that you can do as a business owner, if you're thinking about partnering up with somebody, is number one, you have to know them in advance. I always say to clients that getting into a partnership in business is much like getting married. Maybe you might want to start dating first. You might want to see how a person that you're thinking about partnering with operates, make sure that they have the same level of commitment to the end goal as you do. And so I met with a gentleman that I'd known for a period of time, and we were discussing, some opportunities in the business space, and we made a decision to go ahead and to capitalize on those. And we had a written agreement that, set forth what the terms and conditions of our collaboration were going to be. And at the time when it made sense that that wasn't going to work any longer, we went back to our agreement and we said, this is how we're going to divide things. And it was relatively amicable, just like any other dissolution. There's, each party sees that there's opportunities on each side for them to pursue independently. And we were able to do that without a lot of drama, which was very nice.
That's awesome. And, you laid the foundation. So everybody watching, I hope you replay that. It was about the consistent communication with that new soon-to-be partnership. And then you actually had a document, something that you put in writing so that when something were to happen, you go back to the document, you both made commitments, you both signed on that, I'm assuming, and really it was easier to get out of it. Is that my interpretation correct?
That's a similar analogy that maybe some of the viewers might be used to is that, if you're going to get into a business partnership with somebody, business partnership agreements, separation agreements, your incorporation, stock purchase options, all of those things is very much like a prenuptial agreement that you might have with someone you're making your spouse. You lay out all of the documentation, set forth all the responsibilities, you put everything in there. And then when the time comes to say, this isn't working for me or this isn't working for us, then you already have a path forward. So you're not having to reinvent new ground. You're not having to get anxious and live in the drama of, okay, what happens next? You have a pathway. You have a document that'll set forth the rights and responsibilities that each of you have, not only to preserve, the corpus of whatever enterprise we're doing, but also to separate. So that way there's no question as to what happens next. And that's really helpful. And especially for small business owners, it's really essential because litigation and drama really end up being a drag on resources and time and creativity.
I love it. Yeah. I mean, just let's not be lazy, ladies and gentlemen. Let's make sure we do it the right way. It's kind of easy to sometimes just start up a business if you feel like you have an idea and you have a partner, but then if you didn't establish it the right way, it could be disastrous in the future. So
yeah, I think Franklin said, ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and that's really the case.
100%. So neat. You're in this firm. You started with someone else, and you got to a point where, hey, it kind of makes sense to go your own way. What are you thinking now? Is it the same type of law that you're about to practice when you open up your own firm, Archer Law? What things are you talking about to yourself? Like, hey, I want an office in a different location. I want this type of clientele. Walk us through kind of some of the semblance of a business plan that you kind of started putting together.
So when I started to decide what I wanted to do, I had already had some contacts and some friends in this area. And I had actually helped where I'm currently officed, and I've been officed now for about 15 years. I actually helped this owner of this business. It's a real estate office. They do regular residential and commercial purchases and sales. I'd actually helped them purchase the building. And at that point in time, I had most of my base in terms of my network and my contacts were on the southwest side of Chicago. There's close proximity to my house. It wasn't downtown, and many of my clients, there's a lot of people in Chicago, for example, who never go downtown. And so having a downtown office and, having people pay $30-$40 for parking, what I found over a period of time was that some people were not too interested in that. You have to look at who is your market. Are they comfortable visiting? Are you making it easy for them to come in to see you? And what I was finding is that it wasn't difficult for them to get a hold of me, but it was difficult for them to come and see me. And for the type of work I do, sometimes people want to have that personal touch. They want to come to the office, and downtown just wasn't the place to be. So I opened on a large avenue with plenty of parking and made a business model. I'm on Archer Avenue, so it's the Archer Law Group. And my website is lawontarget.com. My logo is a person who looks like he's pulling a bow. So I just created a concept in marketing that I wanted to have law targeted to the needs of my client. So I went through a creative process of trying to formulate all of those things, and I've been serving people in the real estate space ever since then.
I really enjoyed that, and I remember when I first met you, one of the marketing pieces that you had was that gentleman with the bow and arrow, kind of looking at that target, and you had it looped around some of the things that you should be thinking about as a business owner. Can you walk us through a little bit of kind of the mindset of why when they come to you, you start to teach people what it is to really target into their business?
Well, one of the first things, on our licenses, it says attorney and counselor at law. So a lot of times I think the first thing, at least in terms of my perspective, that I like to do is I want to find out what are my clients' needs. I want to find out where are they coming from. Many times people feel that if they come in to visit with an attorney, it's a transactional relationship. I have a problem. Here's my problem. I'm asking you to come in to fix it. But what I've often found in 21 years of practice is that if there's an issue in one area, there's generally an issue somewhere else. So by having a good, conversation with my clients, helping to establish some rapport, helping to establish what their needs are, I can find out how did we get here and make sure that, number one, we don't, come back to this point in time where you have to come see a lawyer. But then also, after we solve this problem, how do we set you up for growth in the future? So when I meet with folks, I just like to ask a lot of questions. I like to get some background. How long have you been doing this? When did you start? What are some, successes you've had? What have been the difficulties? Have you seen these problems before? I'll go through an analysis with them on that. What I find is that people appreciate that because they're so focused on the problem that they're bringing to the lawyer. Sometimes they don't get a chance to think about all of the other issues in the business that are a stress. And since we're spending time and we're trying to problem solve, it's not just issue solve. It's like if you go to the doctor and you say, I have a headache, and they just give you an aspirin, that might not cure your headache. You might have something else going on. So they're going to ask you more questions. They're going to do more diagnosis. And even in some cases, they may take a test, right? They may run some diagnostic to determine, what the nature of your situation is. And by doing a deep dive with the clients, I can help them assess what they need to do in order to make sure that we don't find ourselves in a situation again.
Wow. Yeah, you just laid out a really interesting concept, making sure that when you first engage with a client to really discover their true deeper needs, right? As you said, they're coming to you with a problem. They may not realize some of the other issues within their business or needs, and you've been able to discover that through a good discovery conversation. So tell us a little bit about, you kind of reference, hey, when I left that partnership, I knew where my market was. I knew where my connections were. I knew that I had discovered some things about servicing my clients and their ease of way of doing business with you. You just described a little bit about kind of that discovery sense of when that client first comes in. Is there anything else that you do as an attorney at law that's different in marketing for Archer Law and the way that you've built your brand?
Well, I would say that all my clients have personal contact with me. A lot of firms will take on, especially in the real estate space, there are for some firms that tend to be like a mill, which is they get the deals in and then they close them. And, there's that. I would say that I have a very nice and been very fortunate to have a repetitive customer base. I just closed a lady this week. I closed her 4 years ago. And they were ready to move up to a new house. And so I was able to do her sale and her new purchase on a transaction. And I think I did that because I stay in contact with my clients. I'm very friendly with them. I don't stand over here for my clients and tell them, well, I'm the lawyer and you are the client and, you need to listen to me. I think that when I ask my clients questions, just like anything else, try to take a vested interest in their success. They know that they can get a hold of me. Most of my clients call me on my cell phone, so that way they know that, hey, I've got a lawyer, and I can get a hold of him quickly and easily. And I find that they refer friends. If you do a nice job and you sincerely and judiciously help your clients, they tend to reward that with bringing friends and family. So I would say that that's one of the big things that I think I've done well, which is to, take an interest in my clients. It's a sincere interest. And they know that I'm out there fighting for them and helping them. And when they see that, I think that they reciprocate by providing more opportunities.
And that'll lead us later on in the conversation. I always like to end with client experience, employee engagement, and operational excellence. And you kind of just broke it down. So, ladies and gentlemen, wait till the end, because I think Felix will share with you really one of the determining factors of why Archer Law is really growing in Chicago and doing some great things. So, you go through that process, being able to kind of be there for your client, exposure and availability. Tell me a little bit about also, did you set up a unique type of website? I shared with people that when I first met you, you had this marketing collateral that really kind of made me understand how you teach people business and law. Obviously, you dived into more of the real estate as well. Is there anything else that you're doing to really bring traffic to you besides referrals?
It's an interesting practice for law. So, I do stuff like, for example, I'm on Yelp. So that has actually driven quite a bit of opportunity for the last few months. It's interesting. Lawyers for many years were actually prohibited from doing certain types of advertisements. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, you see, attorneys on every bus and, bus shelter in the city of Chicago. Typically, those are for injury law attorneys. Typically, those are for bankruptcy and stuff like that, right? So, but what I have found for my marketing purposes is that I also go to referral sources. So referral sources for me tend to be realtors and lenders. And so I have a wonderful base of people who've been very generous over the course of years in terms of offering, their clients who they're putting their trust in me with. So we'll do co-marketing strategies and things like that. My website, I'll be honest with you, is very stale. It probably hasn't been updated in over a decade. But that chart, which is basically a concentric circle showing when a business starts, some of the legal needs that they may have, and it's a target. And as you come in with the bullseye being ultimately getting value for that business upon sale, you have to think about a business owner, sitting down, creating a concept and saying, how am I going to deal with employees? How am I going to deal with clients? What are my contractual obligations? What's going to be my business process? How am I going to ensure quality control during delivery? And then post-execution follow-up. Those are really the big things that are done. Internally in my office, I have a very good client management software that helps me manage all of that. It helps keep track of time, make sure that I'm making my phone calls and keeping my contacts to my clients so that I'm always staying top of mind. I make extensive use of electronic communications, because folks work during the day, so they're not available generally to have a chit chat with their lawyer. So, but we do keep in contact with folks that way. And when they, I think when a client is engaged in a transaction, let's say a real estate closing, they're looking to say, okay, what's the update? What's the latest information? And so I have a system in place where generally about at least once a week, and then, of course, if there's any updates, I'm getting a hold of them. So that way, by the time that they go to their inbox, they see, oh, my lawyer was working on my file today. I don't have to worry. I know it's being addressed. And so that tends to be the best way to do it. So, very little on the traditional internet marketing in terms of my area of practice, but people-to-people marketing with trusted referral sources, and then having a good system of execution and follow-up with the clients has really proven to me to be an excellent way to continue to keep that pipeline very full.
That's excellent. And it sounds like, you've developed a system throughout the years. You kind of see and you weather the storms of maybe downtime, but also those relationship building side of things, right? And growing those, and not only your network, but within your client base. So tell us a little bit about, now let's walk into Archer Law today. What does it look like for a client when they're coming in? And then also, have you started to then bring on new associates as far as, people that are, I don't know what they call them in the law group side of things.
Associates.
Associates. Do you have you mentioned a great software system, so that obviously has automated some of your business. Is there do you use a virtual assistant? Do you bring on a regular assistant right now? Have you grown your associate base, or is that a plan in the future?
Well, what's interesting is that I have gone through all of that, yes, and I have scaled back and I've ramped up and everything else. The practice of law is interesting because over the course of 21 years, just sort of as a reference, when I went into that first office that I worked at downtown in Chicago, the big high-rise building with the view of the lake, I walked in, and on my desk was a binder, which was probably about 4 or 5 inches thick. That binder had all of the memorandum, which was essentially the employee, handbook for lawyers for that firm. And much like that Tom Cruise firm, The Firm, the Tom Cruise movie, The Firm, it's like, you came in and you're like, okay, here's all of what you're supposed to do here. And for the first several days, I sat there and I read a binder of all the rules and policies and regulations of the firm. The desk, and this is in 1999, by the way. So the desk did not have a computer. So there was no internet, really, that was a thing in the practice of law. And I had a dictaphone, which is, for the audience who may not remember, is a small recording device. So whenever I had to write a letter, I would say, on file 1234, letter to Mr. Jones, whatever the address was, reference the matter, dear sir, in relationship to your correspondence of, and I would dictate that. And I would dictate about 20, 30 letters to, folks during the course of days. There was a secretarial pool who would transcribe those, put them in a letter, proofread them with me, and then I would execute them. There was no email usage. Everything was done via thermal paper fax or fax later, and then, U.S. Postal Service. So that's where I started as a practitioner.
And that was 1999?
That was 1999. Wow. I mean, it literally feels like that was the dark ages of the practice of law,
Gosh.
I mean, in law school, we had, there wasn't Wi-Fi, really, so everything was via Ethernet, but Ethernet was still in its infancy, and there was not a lot of websites and web presence, and not everybody had email. So, it's interesting, right? So that's where you start. Very labor intensive, having a lot of secretaries, needing a secretarial pool, having a cumbersome process of dictating, proofreading, and going back and forth. So then over time, obviously, technology became less expensive, more advanced. So I've had secretaries. At one point in the office, I had 3 different secretaries. So I had one secretary that would do purchases, one that would do sales, and one that would essentially keep house, scanning, archiving, keeping documents in order, keeping track of financials and billing and everything else. Then I scaled that back, and at one point I had 3 attorneys working with me. And so I had one attorney working in quasi-criminal matters, I had one working on litigation matters, one that was helping me with real estate, and then I was essentially taking the role as lead business generator. And then when the real estate market really began to tank back in 2007, and opportunities just generally, I think, across the enterprise of law started to, become a little bit more difficult. Less business owners had flexible cash. The type of real estate transactions we were doing were, a lot of short sales, dealing with a lot of foreclosures, much of which is easily done via forms and templates. I scaled back, having as much staff and much stress as a business owner on me to make sure that I was feeding, 3 associates at associate level attorney salaries, plus myself, plus all of the overhead of the office. So at that point, I scaled it back, and then over years, I ramped up more secretarial staff, and now I have, an assistant, I have technology, and going from dictaphone to being able to replace 3 secretaries with a software and a part-timer has increased my bottom line by probably $40,000 to $50,000 a year.
Wow.
So I'm more profitable with less overhead because technology has revolutionized my practice. So, and I have an extensive network of attorneys that I co-counsel with for estate matters, for matters outside my general system wheelhouse. And that's a good benefit to the client. It allows me to check in to make sure the attorneys are handling those in a way that's, comfortable for the client. And I found that this particular point in time, that business model of lean but technology efficient is working very well for the bottom line.
Nice. Now,
and we have an updated modern office, so that helps too.
What's that?
We have an updated modern office with, nice lines, nice lights and colors, beautiful presentation and appearance. And so they come in, they see the professionalism of the office, and they don't get charged because, if you have a lot of staff, you got to pass that on to your clients.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to have technology supplant employees also results in more client value, because I don't have to charge them $500 an hour, lawyers fees. I can do stuff for, somewhere about 2/3 of that.
Wow, interesting. Okay, and you've actually been more profitable. But
Way more profitable.
That's an interesting journey. Now, in the lawyer side, in the law side of things, let's just kind of educate the community here. Is there anything that you do to kind of almost guarantee yourself an income stream? Obviously, you've been an entrepreneur for many years. You're not getting a paycheck. I don't know if at the lawyer firm where you started, did you get a paycheck there, or was it just?
Yeah, I was a W-2, right? I was a wage slave, correct?
Okay, but I mean, they paid you for the hours that you were there at the office, even if you weren't talking to clients, or?
Yeah, so essentially, the business model for attorneys, typically the associate is the grunt. So you're on the ground, you get paid a salary, you're given work, you got to get the work done. And depending on billing, sometimes you'll be eligible for bonuses and additional compensation. That's the typical big law firm model. When I had associates working for me, I paid them a salary, but I also expected them to do income generation on their own. Because, being a solo shop or, a small law firm, essentially everybody needs to be a hunter-gatherer, okay? There's nobody who's just, sitting back at the village preparing the meat. Everybody has to be a hunter-gatherer. And, some people are better at that than others. And, one of the things that I've learned as a business owner is I have to find out whether or not the people I'm going to bring on, whether they're hunter-gatherers as well, or are they just willing to process the meat. And if they're just willing to process the meat, I need somebody who has an additional skill. I need someone to be able to talk to the client and say, hey, for example, we just did your closing. We're going to send you documents. But have you thought about a will? And maybe that's something you should do now. It's a good time. Help upsell some of our services or services that we can refer to one of our partners.
But Felix, we're not salesmen.
So, well, I think anybody who's a business person has to be a salesman, if not 100%. For the services that they offer for themselves, right?
Yeah, no, and that's my point. Is I'm joking at the point that you meet all different types of professionals, and obviously the law profession is a very esteemed and looked up to. But a lot of times within that profession, they're like, well, I'm not in sales. And actually you are in sales. All of us are in sales in some way, shape, or form, and bringing revenue or bringing new meat to the table, right, is a big deal. So I appreciate you breaking that down, because there may be someone that listens to this and goes, well, I'd like to learn under that associate role, or what can I do to get to that next level faster, in those types of situations. So neat. So that was part of the scaling part of things of our conversation. You've shared a lot of the marketing side. Now you've shared a little bit of the scale up and down and kind of the lean and mean situation you're at right now. Tell us a little bit about operations and kind of how the flow of everything works, and we'll end up this interview with the CEO mantra of what we do, and I'll share that in a few seconds. But tell us a little bit about the operations and how you kind of gather that, as well as obviously the software that you're using.
Well, the software I use is called Smokeball. It's really designed for folks in the attorney space. So it's client management in terms of tracking clients, but also systems process. For a lot of what I do, there's deadlines, there's timelines, and there's steps, and there's procedures. And so this is a nice software that basically gives you a tickler every day that says, hey, make sure you address these particular items on a particular client file and case. And so when a client comes into the office in terms of getting their matter referred over, or I'm able to make contact with someone, generally what I'll end up doing is have a conversation real quick. Is this your first time buying? Have you been through this process before? That helps me to determine what level of education my client needs. So that way they're not always wondering in the back of their mind what's going on, what's going to happen next. We can address that, and they can feel comfortable up front. When they're comfortable up front, I find that results actually in less work on the back end, because the client already has the roadmap for what's going to happen. And in terms of operations, it's really just making sure, and I think that this is probably for many business owners, when I consult with my clients who are business owners, they have this wonderful idea of their business, but they don't have a client fulfillment process. So they just are used to what might be called the technical aspect of delivering service, but they don't have it in the totality of what the client experience might be. So, for example, I'll just use a simple one. They're a restaurateur and they know how to cook food, but they haven't done anything to update maybe the client experience. They're still using tables that maybe Frank Sinatra sat in 1950 in their restaurant, and it's stodgy, it's an old appearance, it hasn't kept pace with modern expectations, it has a look that, the food is delicious, right? But the experience maybe is wanting. So we try to have it so that way clients understand we are here, we're helping you, we're going to do it in a nice, clean, professional way. We use the latest technologies so that way we can communicate. And we're going to do so in a way, especially now with coronavirus, for example, you have to have flexible business model. So I've done a lot of client interviews via Zoom. So, if they don't want to come into the office because they're, in a situation where they're in a vulnerable population, we've done lots of Zoom calls. And that's really helped, I think, with the client business process to make sure that they understand that I'm as flexible as I can be, so that way we can get to helping them with their situation.
Yeah, and what a great way to be flexible. I'm sure. Were you using technology before the pandemic, or was that part of your business model?
I really wasn't.
Okay.
I really wasn't. I mean, it was just a situation where back in March, we used to have to, before COVID, I was going to court for, let's say, for example, eviction matters. A lot of what I do on behalf of landlords, my investor clients, I was going to court 2-3 times a week, and now I don't do that anymore. Now everything is held via Zoom.
Wow.
So as a practice area, again, going from a dictaphone and no computer on the desk to, Saturday morning, video conference with my good friend, technology has just made it so that way if you're not keeping up with the latest trends in technology and making yourself available to get in front of people, you're really losing out. And so I think I've done a decent job, at least, of trying to use the latest technologies to benefit the client.
No doubt. You mentioned basically the client relation management system that you have. You mentioned being kind of lean and mean right now with people coming in as a client or referrals, and you have a part-time assistant, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So then how is the, collection of fees? Go into a little bit about, do you work more of a retainer situation? Are you on a case-by-case basis? How do you bill out your hours and then also, manage that cash flow?
One of the things that I've tried to do is, when you consult with a lot of business owners, you see what they do that works, and then you see what they do that doesn't work. And then I think the wise person takes the best of what they see and then employs it in their own practice. So, for example, I will generally charge for a consultation. But the reason I charge for a consultation is because I'm offering you 21 years of wisdom, practice, training, and experience, and that I think has a value.
Sure.
And what that does is that makes sure that I don't have a lot of people who are information seekers coming into the office with, an expectation I'm going to tell them how to solve their problem, spend my time doing that, and then I walk away with nothing in my pocket, but now they've got the answer to their legal issues. That's a liability as well. How about if they didn't share everything with me, and then they say, well, I relied on the lawyer, but they didn't tell the lawyer everything, and now they're going to come back and say you gave me bad advice. So I always charge a client for, my service, and it's not expensive, it's reasonable, but it's to put a value on it.
Sure.
When I work with folks, for example, on a real estate transaction, I have a discussion with them about what the fee expectations are up front so that we're both on the same page. If I expect it to go beyond my initial flat fee, which is what I do for most of my transactions, if we're getting into territory where, hey, the circumstances have changed, something has changed, this is going to require, a significant amount of time more than we originally discussed, I'll let them know well in advance what those circumstances will be so that they know it. And then they pay me at the transaction's, finality. Other things like litigation, for example, what I find is that, everybody wants to sue their neighbor until they find out that it costs them money as well. So sometimes it's a good way as an attorney to weed out people who are out for vengeance versus people who have a legitimate bona fide business dispute that they want to resolve. So I tailor my fee structure in a way so that way I make sure that I don't lose. I can't lose money as a business owner. Time is my commodity. That's what I sell. Time, my wisdom, training, and experience. And people who are not willing to compensate me for that are simply just not clients of the firm. And that's okay. Many times what I found is that if you're flexible with your clients, for example, I had a gentleman in the office, he's being sued. And, I gave him an estimate of the cost of that representation. And I said, typically I will take, in this case, it was about $5,000 up front. And, it's not a huge case, but it's a significant case. And he's like, well, that's a lot of money. And I said, well, you have a lot of problems here. You got a lot of problems. You should have seen me beforehand. So, what I usually do is, although I may not be flexible in terms of what I expect, I can be flexible on payments, right? So I told him, here's my expectation. I want, 50% up front, and then the rest can be paid over a period of time. And that worked for him. And he was grateful for that. So I think that you have to be flexible with your clients, but you have to have essentially a plan A and a plan B with clients, because you have to meet clients where they're at. But at the same time, you never discount your fees. You never, give the friends and family discount or anything like that. You work with them. You can be flexible on payment terms, but not the payment amount.
Awesome. So, one thing we discussed on the Go for CEO channel is, start up to 25 million in revenue. We always like to ask, like, hey, where do you see yourself the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years? I'm assuming right now you're a 6-figure business. Are you going into 7 figures? Is that the goal? Do you want to keep it kind of where it's at? And the transition period, have you thought about the next 3 to 5 years? Will you start to ramp up again? Or do you have any plans to have that, messaging going forward?
That's an interesting question, because we're always trying to evaluate, what will the growth of the business look like? And for me, that has looked like 2 different things over time. At one point, when I had a number of associates, I was able to generate income that was very significant, close to those 7 figures. And as a result, I had, the associates on staff, to process the meat when I brought it home from clients, So I was able to generate that. But the market for that type of work that I was doing at the time literally evaporated overnight.
Wow.
So when that happens, you have to adjust and flex your business model. Right now, what I have done is I tried to, like, for example, back in 2007, which is the period of time that I'm referencing, it was very easy to have a lot of transactions. There was a lot of liquidity in the market. Finances were good. And then what did we have in 2007? Essentially, we had that Great Recession. So a lot of business opportunities dried up, and I went from having an overhead of about $15,000 a month just for office type of stuff, salaries not included, just office stuff, to now, when this current recession pandemic scourge came along, it's $1,500. So it's a massive difference in terms of how I was conducting the overhead and the office operations versus how it is now. And that alone has just been a tremendous saving grace this year, which is I essentially have no overhead. I have rent and I have, Wi-Fi, and that's about it. And it's very straightforward and it's very simple. And it's really made all the difference in the world, taking less anxiety, taking less stress. So I used to say, well, I need to spend a lot of money to make a lot of money. And now what I found is I'll make a lot of money if I don't spend money ridiculously, I spend it targeted. So where I'll invest my opportunities is I'll help my partners grow. So if I have a realtor or a mortgage broker and they're putting on a seminar or they're doing an activity and they want marketing cooperation dollars and my name will be co-branded, I'll invest in those things. I'm finding that gets me the best ROI. In terms of growing it with additional associates, I'm 46 years old. I'm anticipating that I'm probably going to work, in the capacity as a lawyer that I'm doing now for maybe about another 14 years. So I'm actually beginning to work on some passive income investments. Having seen a lot of my real estate investment clients do a lot of real estate, I do anticipate that the market for investment is going to be very hot for real estate coming into next year. So I'm positioning myself so that I can have some additional real estate investments because I'm familiar with the business. I know how to do the construction, the contacts that I've had through clients throughout the years. I'm setting myself up so that way I can have a nice growth period of time with passive income investments for the next 14 to 15 years. And then when that time comes, instead of having to focus exclusively on representing other people, I can work on continue to grow my own portfolio.
That's well, you led me right into exit strategy, right? Over the next few years, you kind of just laid it out. How do you get out of being the only guy that really produces income? You just laid it out. You start using some of the money that you make on a yearly basis. You're channeling it back into different resources and real estate investments and maybe even other. Now, you mentioned, I do want to, it's been in the back of my mind here as we're talking. You had mentioned a little bit about like a hub and spoke scenario. So did you say that when you refer out to different lawyers, do you also make money at that, or is that just a simple referral?
Certain types of work you do. For example, if I refer a bankruptcy case out, those folks are prohibited from offering referral fees. So that's in the statute, so we can't do that. But for example, a personal injury case, typically estate planning, typically most other types of legal work, if I refer to a colleague, the tradition is that you'll discuss a fee sharing arrangement. And generally, I can't just, say, here you go, and never follow up. I usually get involved with the case as either a secondary counsel or as a consultant to the attorney. So that way I can bridge between the client and that attorney to make sure that they're also as well represented as possible. I mean, they came to me because they trusted me, and I don't like just a handoff. I like to make sure that I also do the poke-in every once in a while. Hey, how's the case going? How are things proceeding? Is there anything I can do to help? And so, yeah, we do get referral fees on those, the percentage of which can range from, personal injury can be a third. I mean, I've had cases that I've referred out, 6-figure settlements, attorney's fees is a third, and then I'll get a third of that. So, you might get $8,000, $9,000 in compensation for a phone call, following up over a short period of time. It's nice work if you can get it. So that helps. That definitely helps.
For sure. Well, those are little tricks of the trade, right? As a business owner in all different types of fields, ladies and gentlemen, you start to see opportunities where these connections, these networks that you've built up, there is no shame in the game of being able to say, hey, looking forward to continue this relationship, what kind of compensation, just have that real bold talk about, either it's an industry norm or you kind of have to tweak it, right? You have to, encourage it and stuff like that. So myself being in the personal finance and the business finance space nowadays, it's interesting. I've built out networks and that type of thing. And yeah, those are things that I look to do. And as I've gotten older, because I have 3 kids and a lot more responsibility in my life, I'm not just giving it away, which, wasn't bad. I think I built a lot of rapport, a lot of great goodwill out there.
A lot of goodwill.
Yeah. But nowadays, I like you, I feel like in my expertise, part of building out the Go for CEO, I think my questions are eloquent and are in the business space, so I'm teaching people. So eventually, that's kind of where hopefully what happens is you build that wealth beyond the experience, right? So interesting. So
I use the practice of law essentially to provide myself with, a very comfortable standard of living and to help to grow the Gonzalez name into the future. So, to prepare, my kids for success, to be able to send them to good schools and everything. But, as a practitioner serving clients, I would always have to be out there serving those clients. And so I think that as I look at my practice, in the next 10 to 15 years, do I want to go to court all the time? Do I always want to meet with folks? I mean, I enjoy it now, but where will I be 15 years? Probably not. And, I like a new challenge. I have a diversity of interests. And so I like to tickle those every once in a while. And, I think that if you do the same thing all the time forever, you eventually get burned out. And so I think that we should have diverse interests as business owners. You have one thing that you're primarily concentrating on. You have something else as your sort of side hobby that's also income producing. And then you also have a long game as well. I think that those are the keys. And I found for myself that keeps me motivated, excited, and well fed.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I mean, that's a great mindset and great structure of how you've kind of built over the last 20 years, really a foundational business. So, we're coming up to the end here, and one of the things that we talk about, especially the last few interviews, is we've set the foundation that Go for CEO is, C is for client experience, and I know you entailed a little bit of that, but I want you to just give that final breadth of what it means to do business with Archer Law Group. Employee engagement, and then operational excellence. And employee engagement, in your case right now, without necessarily a plethora of employees, it might mean that distribution of, how do you deal with the guys that you refer business to in that experience? So I'll recap it again. Client experience, what's that value-added proposition that Archer Law brings to the table that's second to none?
I think we have a good system, so I have a good way of making sure that I reach out to clients. They feel comfortable, confident, and secure that we're going to address their legal needs. Through the process of representation, we make sure that they're kept in the most up-to-date and recent communications. I mean, communication is everything, especially with the speed of business now. If I don't reach out to somebody, within 24 hours, sometimes they'll worry if I've dropped off the face of the earth. So there's that. So I was, communication, technology, reaching out, but also just not only reaching out in terms of here's this, it's reaching out with this, the heart, letting folks know that you're taking that vested interest in them personally, in their personal situation. I think for me has really been the biggest way of making sure that I do the best for my clients. In terms of within the office, I have a technology that has essentially been able to replace 2 employees. So for all the business owners out there, I would say that, I think sometimes we guilt ourselves into saying, well, I got to keep these people on staff. I got to do this. And I've seen a lot of business owners do that to the point of jeopardizing their own success. I would really encourage people to take a look at your industry, take a look at your marketplace, find out what technology can help you become more efficient, okay? If you're not doing that, you're hurting yourself long term. If I hadn't invested in technology over the last 10 years, I probably would have lost over, I would say, $250,000 worth of income with staff and everything else. That $250 is now in my bottom line. And that's really helpful, especially in the time we're coming into now where things might be very lean. And then what's the third one, John?
Just operational excellence, that last step of why you guys do it the best.
Right. Operational excellence really means having a system, letting your clients know what that system is, and making sure that you're faithful and that you fulfill that system. So that way they can say there was a promise made, there was a promise kept. And because of that, I have confidence that if I refer my friends and family, they're going to get the same treatment too.
Awesome. So, hey, everyone, I want to thank, obviously, Felix for sharing, our first attorney on the channel. Looking forward to seeing him 6 months, a year from now, kind of seeing what's going on. Hopefully we'll be out of this craziness of what's developed in 2020. But sharing, his story and Archer Law Group, and we'll put a lot of his information is, if you want to just give your phone number, Felix, your website, and then the best email.
So the website is lawontarget.com, and I can also be found on Facebook at Archer Law Group. Not a lot of content up there, a few interviews talking about real estate stuff. The phone number is 312-602-9553, and I can always be emailed at Felix, Felix, at lawontarget.com.
Awesome, brother. Well, and we'll have everything on the bottom here. And hey, remember, everybody, if this is the first time you've seen our channel, hopefully you're getting a lot of content value. These are long formats, so I hope that you really enjoyed the interview. And go ahead and smash that like button. I know a lot of people try to do that at the beginning. I'm trying to learn this YouTube channel game, but smash the like button, become a subscriber. Ask a question in the comments area. I'm trying to make sure that our engaged interviewees will see this content. And if you have a question, not only do you want to reach out maybe personally, but engage within the forum of the comments and share your thoughts. So, Felix, again, man, thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate you coming on.
Good to hear from you, John. All the best with the channel.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Let's see. All right. Cool, brother. Let me just.
You want to hear something funny?